On August 9th, 1978, it was a very hot summer day in Athens, Greece. The time was around 2 p.m., and a large Boeing 747 airplane was getting ready to take off. This airplane, called Flight 411, was owned by Olympic Airways and was carrying 400 passengers. Most of the passengers were Americans who had been on vacation in Greece and were now flying back home to New York. The airplane was about to fly from Athens International Airport to JFK International Airport in New York. The day was clear, but the heat made the air very thick, which can sometimes make it harder for an airplane to fly easily. As the airplane started speeding up on the runway to take off, a serious problem happened. One of the engines on the plane suddenly exploded. This explosion was a huge shock to the pilots and crew, and it caused the plane to struggle as it tried to lift off the ground. The plane was already going too fast to stop safely, so it had to continue flying, even with the engine broken. This is where the real danger began, as the airplane had to fight to stay in the air. The most important person on the airplane that day was Captain Megidus. He had been a pilot for 32 years and had flown many flights with Olympic Airways. Captain Megidus was very experienced and had seen many different situations during his career. He was in charge of making all the important decisions on the flight. His calmness and experience were going to be tested in the next few minutes when the engine exploded. Joining Captain Megidus in the cockpit was First Officer Fardos. He was also a very experienced pilot and had worked with Captain Megidus for many years. They were good friends and trusted each other completely. In an emergency, it was important that they worked together as a team, and this was one of those moments when teamwork was crucial. The rest of the crew on board were also trained professionals. There were 18 flight attendants who helped passengers and made sure everything was safe in the cabin. The cabin crew wasn't aware of how dangerous the situation was at first, but they quickly understood when the plane started having trouble. The pilots and crew were all experienced, but even their skills were going to be put to the test as they faced the terrifying challenge of trying to keep the plane in the air and land it safely. As the plane started speeding down the runway, everything seemed normal at first. However, just as Flight 411 was about to lift off into the sky, something terrible happened. One of the engines on the plane exploded. This was a huge problem because the plane needed all of its engines to safely take off and reach the right height in the sky. The engine that exploded was engine number 3, located on the right side of the plane. When it blew up, pieces of the engine rained down onto the runway, creating a mess of debris. The explosion also caused a sudden loss of power. The plane began to shake and struggled to stay in the air. At this point, the pilots had a big problem. The plane had already reached its rotational speed, the speed it needs to take off, and there was no way to stop. Even though engine 3 was destroyed, they couldn't just abort the takeoff because the plane was already going too fast. Captain Megidus and First Officer Fardos now had to work fast. They had to figure out how to gain altitude to climb into the sky because the plane was still very low, and there was a mountain and buildings in front of them. The biggest issue was that engine 2, the next engine on the right side, was also not working well. It had recently been repaired and was not giving the plane enough power to climb as fast as needed. This made the situation even worse. The pilots had to make some tough decisions. They knew the plane was at risk of stalling, which means the plane could fall from the sky if it didn't get enough speed. To try to make the plane climb, Captain Megidus decided to retract the landing gear, pull it up into the plane, even though this wasn't usually done at such a low height. Normally, doing this would make the plane slow down and could make it crash. But Captain Megidus made the decision because there was a hill ahead, and if they kept the landing gear down, the plane wouldn't have enough speed to clear it. At only 35 feet above the ground, Captain Megidus took a huge risk and ordered the landing gear to be retracted. This decision allowed the plane to gain a little bit of altitude, but it also meant they were flying very low over densely populated areas. The situation was now extremely dangerous. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Megidus was the person everyone looked to for guidance. His years of experience were now more important than ever. As soon as the engine exploded, he knew that the plane was in serious trouble. But instead of panicking, Captain Megidus stayed calm and began thinking fast. He had to make life or death decisions with very little time to act. One of the first things Captain Megidus did was assess the situation. He knew the plane was struggling because of the damaged engine and the other engines not performing well. He also realized that they were flying dangerously low, over a densely populated area. If the plane crashed, many lives would be lost, not just the passengers, but also people on the ground. His instincts told him to take risks. He decided to retract the landing gear at just 35 feet above the ground, even though this was against normal procedures. Normally, retracting the gear at such a low altitude would increase drag, making the plane slow down and increasing the risk of a crash. But Captain Magidis knew that keeping the landing gear down meant they wouldn't clear the mountain in front of them. So he took a huge risk and trusted his experience. His decision to trust his gut and make bold choices saved the lives of everyone on board. Captain Magidis's quick thinking and courage in the face of danger turned him into a true hero. Despite all the challenges, Captain Magidis and the crew were not giving up. The plane was still flying very low over the city, and they had to make some quick decisions to keep the plane in the air and find a way to land safely. The altitude was too low, and the speed was too slow for comfort. But slowly, the pilots began to see a bit of hope. The crew managed to optimize the remaining engines. This helped to give the plane a little more power and allowed them to slowly gain some altitude. They were also lucky because the weather conditions started to work in their favor. A breeze began to blow, which helped the plane's speed and lift. This combination of better engine power and the cool breeze gave them a small boost, and the plane's altitude slowly began to increase. However, the danger wasn't over yet. They were still flying very low, only about 200 feet above the ground, and there was a mountain ahead. Captain Magidis knew they couldn't go over the mountain at the current speed, but he had just enough altitude and power to make a sharp turn. He turned the plane out over the sea, which took them away from the mountains and the dense city. This turn was a risky move, but it worked. Now that the plane was flying a little higher, Captain Magidis made another important decision. He started dumping fuel to lighten the plane. With less weight, the plane could climb more easily. After some tense moments, the plane finally reached 1,500 feet of altitude. At this point, Captain Magidis felt confident enough to retract the flaps and prepare for a safe landing. After everything they had been through, Flight 411 was able to land safely back at Athens International Airport. There were no injuries and everyone on board was safe. It was a miracle. And the crew's quick thinking, bravery, and teamwork had made all the difference. The story of Olympic Airways Flight 411 is not just about a plane facing a crisis. It's about human qualities like trust, courage, and leadership that made all the difference. One of the biggest themes is trust. Throughout the crisis, Captain Magidis trusted his own instincts, even when the situation was terrifying. He trusted his experience as a pilot and his decision-making skills, which led him to take risks that ultimately saved everyone. The theme of courage is also very strong. Captain Magidis had to make choices that went against normal procedures. These were risky decisions, but he knew that sometimes courage means doing what's needed, not what's easy or safe. Finally, the theme of leadership is clear. Captain Magidis led his team with calmness and clear thinking under pressure. His teamwork with First Officer Fardos, the flight attendants, and the entire crew kept the plane in the air and brought it back to safety. True leadership is about staying focused, even when everything seems impossible. These themes of trust, courage, and leadership show us that in times of crisis, it's not just skills that matter, but also the strength of character to make the right choices. After the dramatic flight, there were investigations to understand exactly what happened and why. The Greek National Air Safety Board, which investigates aviation accidents, didn't exist at the time, so an investigation was carried out by other organizations, including Boeing. Boeing's investigation focused on the plane's performance after the explosion. They found that the problem wasn't with the plane's structure or its engines directly, but was due to the flight crew inadvertently shutting off the water injection pumps. These pumps were important because they helped keep the engines cool and running efficiently. When they were turned off by mistake, it caused the engines to lose power, which made it much harder for the pilots to keep the plane in the air. As a result of this incident, Olympic Airways and the aviation industry made some important changes. The incident led to a review of procedures for dealing with engine failures and emergency protocols during takeoff. Airlines also made sure pilots received more training on handling such crises, including better knowledge of how to deal with complex engine problems during flight. In the aftermath, Captain Magidis became known as a hero. His bravery and decision-making saved the lives of hundreds of people, and his actions changed how pilots were trained to handle emergencies. The story of Flight 411 is more than just a tale of a near crash. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of human skill, bravery, and quick thinking in moments of crisis. Captain McGinnis's ability to make life-or-death decisions saved 418 lives and prevented a disaster that could have been one of the worst in aviation history. His actions showed that, even in the most terrifying moments, trusting your instincts, leading with courage, and thinking outside the box can make all the difference. The incident also left a lasting impact on the aviation industry. It led to changes in safety protocols and better pilot training to ensure that future emergencies would be handled even more effectively. This incredible story is a testament to the power of leadership and the value of human decision-making in the face of danger. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible tales.